Welcome back to the Trucking Payroll channel. Today, we have a special guest. I want to tell you a little story. We do trucking payroll here, of course, and a lot of times when we meet new clients, they're asking us, "Oh, can you help us with our taxes? Can you help us with bookkeeping?" And sometimes it's even, "Will you do those? We don't even care about payroll." And for years, we would try and help them, and quite honestly, the bookkeeping part we never really did. And the tax stuff I did for a while, but the tax laws keep changing, and you can only focus on so many things. So today we have a guest, Jim Copley from Taxes4Truckers.com. Jim and his crew, that's what they do. First of all, I love their name. Like Taxes for Truckers is such a great name because it tells you exactly what they do. And they are the missing piece for all of these people that have asked. So Jim, thank you so much for coming. Uh, yeah, welcome.
Mike, having me. I appreciate the time to talk about it and get some information out there to people and in a way that's just easy to digest and kind of gets people to help take the right next step. So, thanks
Yeah,
for having me.
that's awesome. So tell us how you guys got into this. I mean, everybody has a crazy story for how they got into trucking related things. So what is your story?
Yeah, not a place I would ever have pre-imagined myself to be in. So my wife is an accountant, and her father was a long haul truck driver back in the day. So back in the day, the old long haul truckers who he was all over the United States. I think he hit all states in the union during his career. And I think Alaska is the only one he didn't take a trip to, but he went there at one point. So he covered the whole. Those guys, they were on the road all the time. I think it was probably even a little more harsh, 50 years ago than it can be today in some respects. And so she saw him make every mistake a truck driver can make financially. He was a great truck driver. He was not a great business owner. And I love Harold, good dude, love him to death. He would be the first to admit that he wish, although wish I'd known then what I know now, really bit him in the butt. And so when she went into accounting, went to school, one of the areas that she just kind of naturally gravitated towards was trucking. And then, it's kind of interesting. She took classes from a guy who was an older accountant. Lots of accountants aging out right now. And she ended up buying out his book of business. When he was going to retire, he chose one of his students. He said, "Yeah, I'm going to pick my best student." And so she bought his book of business and ended up teaching his classes at the college that she had taught at. So, it is kind of a cool organic story, but it does kind of flow through in terms of Leah's just always been involved in the trucking world, daughter of a trucker, ended up, really learning how to specifically address the transportation industry in terms of what the tax needs and tax laws and write-off. And, there are a lot of specifics to this industry that a lot of accountants just do not know. And so that's what brought us.
Yeah, I think your last phrase is the magic to me. A lot of accountants just don't know. I see it all the time. They don't, even just the stuff that I deal with per diem and whatnot, they just don't understand how it works. They don't understand how to be a best advisor to their client, because it's an important thing to be able to generate a proper tax return. And that's really important. However, it's another thing to be able to say, "Hey, look, we do people just like you all the time, and here's what they're experiencing. So you might want to do this thing." A great example on the tax thing too is non-highway use of diesel for your reefer guys. A regular tax preparer won't know that you can get some of that money back.
And there are a lot, that is exactly it. And, they become exponential also. And, so we have a lot of folks who come to us from other transportation accountants, believe it or not, who don't know the per diem percentages or who don't know numbers or who just don't know the right write-offs. We had a guy whose accountant wouldn't let him write off his showers. Well, the IRS wants you to be clean, and they're good at writing off showers. Everyone's on the same page with that one. Take the shower, write it off, right? There are a lot of those things that if you aren't aware of, but what's $5 times a couple of hundred, right? I mean, if you start adding these numbers up, so not only is it money that you aren't paying out, but it's money that's a write-off, and those things, they do compound. And the truth of it is, you touched on something earlier that I talk with a lot of truck drivers about, which is There is no shame in not knowing accounting. I am not an accountant. I don't feel shame about it. I just married an accountant. But if you didn't marry an accountant, then you should probably hire one if you're not one. There's no shame in that. I do joke with people that I've got a very smart doctor. Love her. If I have something going on, I feel like I'm getting really sound, like real world advice. She takes the time to talk to me for a minute. All that jazz you hope for in a doctor. She has an accountant. Super smart lady has an accountant. There are all sorts of areas in the world where I'm not an expert who I pay someone else to do that work. I don't want to shock myself to death doing some electrical work, putting in a new breaker, and so I hire an electrician, right? That's in my best interest financially and in every other capacity. So, that whole idea that, and look, let's be honest about it, truck drivers are notoriously stubborn people. Love you, work with you all the time. There are a lot of things you do awesome. There are some things you don't do awesome. And just acknowledging that and going, you know what? I had a driver 2 days ago, and I love that he said that to me. He said it to me before I had to say it to him. He said, man, I believe in hiring my weaknesses. And I was like, that's fantastic. The driver who gets it, he's 23 years old, and I can tell you, he's like head of the game by leaps and bounds over some guys who just won't accept that fact that, you know what, I can pay these guys to do my taxes and payroll and make sure that stuff is taken care of so that I can focus on what I do best. This guy and I had a conversation then about, what the time you worry about and take to do these things that you can't really do, if you spent that same amount of time on getting an extra load or working into buying that second truck he's working on, or putting your energy and effort into making a relationship with a broker who you're going to get the loads from to satisfy the needs of buying that truck, and all those pieces of the puzzle that you're good at, do your pieces of the puzzle. The pieces that you don't have any clue about, hire someone good to do them. Hire us, hire Mike, hire people who can come in and fill in the gaps of your weaknesses so you have your.
Yeah, exactly. And what I tell my trucking friends if they need help from me and they're in my office and they see me typing away on the computer, they're like, man, I could never figure that out. And I'm like, well, you watch me try and back a truck into a dock and see how that goes.
Right.
It's not going to go well. I'm probably going to exactly hit the corner because it's just going to be a mess. And so, yeah, I'm in agreement with you. Do what you do well. Do the things that make you money. One of the things that we tell people, and I'm sure you agree, is, and you just kind of said it, was the money making activities. If you're a solo operator with your own authority, your money making activity is getting to know brokers that will give you better loads. If you're a small fleet with 3 or 4 or 5 trucks, your money making opportunity might be just making sure you have the best drivers, and spend your time and your money on that and not on worrying about tax law. And one other thing that you'd said that I think is a really good point is that it's not a lot of people will view the accountant as part of the IRS, for example. And so it's almost like the trucker against you and the IRS, but that's not what it is. I think what you guys do and what a lot of people do is it's you and the trucker against the IRS. So that you can play the game, you can help them manage it. They're not, I mean, not to paint with a broad brush, but generally speaking, if a truck driver has to talk to the IRS, it's not going to go well, because you called them stubborn. I like to use determined because it sounds more heroic. But it can be a big problem. But then someone like you can come in and help resolve it in a way that's satisfactory to everybody, and especially, most importantly, satisfactory to the driver. I think that's outstanding. I think that small trucking companies need people like you to fight for them.
Well, on the topic of that, look, the IRS is a topic no one wants to talk about. Obviously, they're just an automatic negative. Even we get a negative, like, chill, going, okay. I don't say it all the time. Sometimes I'll say them. I'll put it off that way, right? No, we have to deal with that facet of business. If you're a smart truck driver, you're proactive with it. But you know what? The truth of it is, you can be the smartest person in the world, and bad stuff happens to good people. All it takes is one illness or one accident or anything like that, one slip and fall in the ice. Every one of us, can be in that scenario and have our life change. When that happens, the best thing you can do is get with someone. We do a lot of back tax filings. and we do a lot of IRS tax resolution. We do talk with the IRS quite a bit on that topic. And when that happens, the best thing you can do is find someone who understands your business and understands how to talk with them. As a mediator to help someone get past that situation, I'll tell you this. The IRS actually wants you to get to the other side. They want you to work through it and get to the other side. So at the end of the day, you're a productive tax-paying citizen in the world, and you're back on track, and you're not one of their problems, right? And so just like everyone else in the world, I think I could dispel a couple myths real quick about the IRS. They don't want your stuff. They don't want to have to deal with taking your house or your car or, selling your farm. They actually don't want your stuff. They want you to get healthy. So they don't want to take your stuff. They want you to make money and get to a place, a position where you're making money again and can keep your stuff, right? And then in terms of the interactions, the people the IRS are going after are the people who won't talk with them. So once you hire us, we run Taxes for Truckers, but we also run Evergreen Tax Resolution. And we have a tax resolution organization within our company, because so many truckers have gotten into trouble that we had to set up a focus of, helping them dig out of that hole. We'd love to keep you from digging into the hole. If you're starting to dig the hole, call us now and say, hey, I feel like I'm getting into a hole. I don't want to have to dig out of the hole with the IRS later on. What do I do right now? And we will actually have the conversation with you versus other accountants who are like, whatever. And that's, I think, Mike, this is something, positioning off the IRS topic a little bit, but one of the things that you've been great about in terms of our getting to know each other and how you tell us you're working with your clients is that you are willing to have a conversation. There's one main complaint I get, taxes and accounting and this world from the drivers is, I send my stuff to ATBS, they send me back a number and say, right. That's the extent of their relationship with their accountant, is that they send the stuff in and they wait and they get back a number and they have to write a check. And writing that check is great. That's a transaction. That's great. Someone did your transaction for you. I don't know which teller I'm going to see at the bank tomorrow. It's a transaction. I go in, I put my check in. She sends the tube back. I take some cash out for the week, whatever, and I move on, right? But if it's a banker who I want to go get a loan from, or if it's a banker I'm looking to do business with actually, as opposed to just making a deposit, man, I want to know that person, right? I want that person to know what we talked about last time. And so if you're a payroll company, if you're doing payroll for someone, you want a payroll person who understands the people in your company a little bit and is able to address a scenario because they know what happened last week and last month. And the same with taxes. It's horrible to just go to our block and go to whoever and have them do your taxes because they don't know your business. What happened with you last year? They certainly don't care what's happening with you next year, because when tax season ends, that person ends. You're never going to see them again. So it's one of our big things. I hate that people go to H&R Block and they pay 2 or 3 times what we charge for bad advice. Like,
I've seen that for years. It's so crazy how they'll go there and all their deductions get disallowed, and because the H&R Block person is used to dealing with someone with a mortgage and a couple W-2s and maybe like an Uber job or something, and they don't get the deductions. And so that's why I wanted to bring you to the people, is because I know how important it is, and I know that you guys can take care of them. And we won't even talk about like the tax relief companies that you see on TV, which maybe we'll get to those later, but that would be like a whole hour of both of us just banging our heads against the computer.
We can do that. Look, there's a lot of information. There are so many myths to be dispelled about, just frankly, anything financial, but facts about the IRS and taxes and how all that goes. I mean, we've had people come in and just be really ill-informed, and we feel bad. I mean, when someone comes in and they've had a bad accountant experience, we genuinely just cringe and feel bad. But you're going to someone who is professional, who you're relying on, And I'll tell you right now, like, I'm not the accountant in the company. I am the person who does the business development, a lot of intake. I do a lot of case management for the tax resolution side and for people who have a lot of back tax filings, help them work through some of those processes and such. I can tell you that once people get into that process, starting it's hard, but you know what? Like, quitting smoking's hard. You know, dry January's hard. You know, getting out of bed in the morning when it's cold outside for me is hard. I can be warm in the bed, cold outside. It's, you know, life's hard. Adult up. If you have a tax problem, I can tell you right now, it's not going to get better. Taxes are one thing, the penalties and interest, and then the bad things like the liens and, you know, levies. You know, it's also unfortunate when someone calls us and says, "Hey, I'm panicked. I can't refinance my business line of credit. I'm out of business in a month if I don't get this taken care of," because they procrastinated and
Yeah,
didn't make the call.
exactly. And yeah, and Jim was nice enough to provide a very brief slideshow that we're going to go through here, because I think he's walking right up to it here with, you know, kind of what do you do if you get that IRS notice from 2018. And the only thing I would add to what you said too is the relief, and you probably see this too when I used to do it, the relief in people's eyes when they come to you and they go, "I haven't filed for 6 years and I'm getting all these letters," and you go, "The first thing we do is we get you filed, and then we'll do the next thing. And you know what? There's a process, and it's okay." They have the best night's sleep they've had in a year that night, which to me is why
No
we do
doubt,
it.
no doubt about it. We actually, our trademark, it's literally trademark, is action-driven peace of mind. Like, we
Nice.
are action peace of mind for people. We get calls from folks who have not slept, who have extreme stress that's affecting their health, and we're able to come in and, first of all, give them accurate information. I mean, that's the peace of mind part. Oftentimes, is that we're able to just give them this, you know, give them actual data and have a conversation so that they can leave that call or that Zoom meeting with me and go, okay, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and here's how I get through the tunnel.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we've got what to do if you owe the IRS taxes, essential advice for truck drivers and transportation professionals. Yeah, I think that this is really important because unfortunately a lot of people owe, and then they just don't know what to do. And so, yeah, you talk right away. The first thing is understanding the situation. I think that's really important. Yeah, the first thing is knowing what. To me, I always ask them, well, what did you file? Because if the
Sure.
auto underreporter unit gets to it from the IRS, says, "Oh, we have a 1099 for, say you're an owner operator and had $200,000 gross, but you didn't file a return," they're going to go, "Oh, it's all income. You owe $20,000 in self-employment tax. You owe, you know, $35,000 in income tax, and you owe penalties and interest." And they send you a bill for $100,000, and so
The
that's a nightmare.
one of the scariest acronyms that we deal with in our business is SFR, which is substitute for return, which means you didn't file a return, so they're going to file one for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you, that is not in your best interest. The
Mm-mm.
IRS doesn't go do Bob a favor and file a real nice return where he hurt.
Yeah, that SFR is to
No,
motivate you to file because they're
right? And
never
so
going to give you anything.
no, and so well, and so you're going to get a filing that has no write off, like nothing
Mm-hmm.
written off, and people don't understand that they're just going to file. Okay, you made $200,000, and here's the tax on $200,000 and the penalties and the interest
Mm-hmm.
for 6 years. So all of a sudden, you're right. All of a sudden, they've got a $100,000 tax bill. And what they don't realize is that there is a way to deal with that, but you got to call us. You can't. I can't do the work for you until you call me and get me started on the process, right?
Exactly.
And it's you know, you can't think it's going to take 6 years to dig a hole, and I'm going to get you out of it in 15 minutes. That's also not how it works. But we do have our process. It's 8 steps that we work through in the process. And you know, one of the other myths that people hear a lot is that there's only one way out of this. That's not true either. When you start to talk with this, you know, people realize, oh my gosh, you know, I have 3 or 4 or 5 options that I could potentially enact. to deal with my specific scenario and what I'm dealing with to get myself and my family to the other side of this, and then start sleeping again or have a life again. You know, sometimes it's the sleep, sometimes it's just people are just, they're so worried they've shut down. You know, a lot of people just
Yep, they just are
shut
like,
down.
oh, I'm going to be off the grid. Isn't it the Chinese proverb of when you're stuck in a hole, the first thing you do is stop digging? Uh,
Right.
yeah, so that's exactly. And like your step one is assess your tax debt. You know, get the notices and reply. You know, figure out what it is with help from you guys or like, from anybody, but you guys I think are the people they should talk to. And don't
Sure.
ignore it. I love that. I love that. Don't ignore IRS communications. That's where your problems start, when you just decide that if I don't open it, it doesn't count.
Right. If I don't look at it, it doesn't exist. And there are a couple things that you touched on in there. One is the communication part is so vital. I touched on that earlier. The minute you start talking with us, well, let me look at it a different way. The minute you start talking with us, you get some peace of mind. But the minute you contract us, you get peace, period, because we start talking to the IRS instead of you. So the communication becomes us, and then our team. We know the agents. We work with the agents, and so that back and forth communication, we have rapport built with them where they understand that once we take someone on, that partnership enables us to help that person get to the other side, and the IRS wants that. So we partner very well with them by setting up that process. And then the other thing you're kind of touching on is how that happens, and ignoring that communication from them. You're going to get things that look real. You're going to get some things that don't look real. I can tell you right now, there's something called the automatic collection system, or the ACS. Most people have never heard of this. I joke about it being the tax terminator. It's essentially a very large AI assisted enabled tax collection system. So they turned the ACS off when COVID hit. They've turned the ACS back on this last summer. So it started processing over the summer, and now we're getting calls from people. The letters that are coming out now are real. That is not a marketing piece. That is not someone trying to bite on the click on the link or whatever it might be. The letters that are coming out in the mail that you're getting that say IRS intent to levy or IRS collection notice, those notices are real. And in fact, I hadn't seen this before. The IRS has actually started to use that automatic collection system to file liens. So typically, it used to be like when you would see a lien, it would say lien filed by, and it would have an agent's name. Now we're seeing them, it says filed by ACS. That means the big computer is going through the 14 million people in America who owe them money and going, hey, let's just file it automatically. And that's a different step. That's a kind of a next step. So if you've got an issue, better to start talking with them, working through it now, because they're using the ACS to actually file a lien count.
Yeah, you can't just sit on a notice and think it's going to go away, or think it's going to expire or something like that, or they're just going to give up on you. They won't give up on you until you work with them.
No.
And then you talk about in step two, exploring payment options. And I think there are a lot that, like you had said, the IRS they don't want your coffee maker. Like, they're not interested in that.
No.
And they'll even tell you, because I've made these calls, not probably nearly as many as you have, or your company has, but they'll say, don't commit to a payment plan you can't afford. They're like, we don't want to come back and do
Right.
this again. And so if you can only afford $200 a month, and they have a determination for that, which you can walk them through if they contact you. But
Absolutely.
yeah, but it's not, you can't just tell them you only can afford $200 a month. You've got to be able to show them you can only afford $200 a month, and they'll accept that. And then eventually the payments will fall off. But you
Right.
can't, they don't want you committing to $200 a month if there's no way you could pay them $200 a month. They aren't going to say, well, you owe $50,000, so you owe us $1,000 a month for 50 months. And you're like, look, I don't have $1,000 a month. It's in nobody's best interest, because they can't get it. And so, yeah, you talk about, setting up a payment plan or making a partial payment, and, and you talk about currently not collectible as well. And I see people with that
Right.
from time to time.
And that does happen. And to the first point, we have a client right now we're working through, and this is the difference. I think this is a really big point to be made between a person just calling the IRS and saying, hey, I want to work through this payment plan process, or calling us. We have a person who called the IRS, is working through the payment plan process, gets the payment plan, and they said, you need to send us $1,500 a month. And he was like, okay. He did, okay. And just took it and was like, he can't make the payments. And so then he's going to falter on that payment plan, and he's actually going to be worse off than he was before he started, because all the penalties that he had, forgiven, all the interest that was being forgiven because he was on a payment plan, all that gets heaped back on, plus the interest and penalties since then. It's actually worse to get onto a payment plan that you can't afford and fail than it is to get on one that you can afford. And people just don't know how to negotiate that on their own with the IRS. There's a process to it. I spoke about the 8 steps. That is one of our steps in our process. And I do try to even make taxes funny. Everybody who comes to us, we do a weekend research project. And I joke about it being the weekend research project, but we have to assess where you are. And we're going to do that. We're going to do that accurately. So one of the things that makes us distinctly different, and I know this is, I'm giving a little more away, maybe I should, but we know the IRS pretty well. We do our homework. The IRS is wrong 33% of the time, meaning there's a 1/3 chance that the number they're telling you that you owe them is incorrect. Could be the wrong taxpayer, could be just the wrong calculations. I can sit here for the next hour and tell you the reasons why they could be wrong. They're wrong by their own admission 1/3 of the time. So the first thing you want to do is you want to call me. You want to say, hey, Jim, I don't know that this is right. And I'm going to go, you know what? I don't know that that's right either. So let's do this. Let's start off and let's do the weekend research project. And we are going to pull your transcripts once you're our client. We're going to look through all your data. We are going to put the time and effort and work into, on the front side, knowing exactly where you stand before we ever talk to the IRS. Because when we go to the IRS, we want our ducks in a row. We're going to have our game on. Like, we're going to be 100% on. We're going to know we're going to have everything we need ready to go, because our client's going to realize, I'm going to cooperate with these guys. We're going to have our ducks in a row. So when we go to the IRS, if their number's wrong, we're going to know right off. If they're incorrect on this or that, or if their game's not on point, and we know that it's not at least 1/3 of the time, if our game's on, that gives us a leg up in solving your problem for you. And so that's how we always start, is by getting to the facts. And making sure that our facts and data are accurate.
It's like you audit the IRS for the taxpayer instead of the IRS auditing the taxpayer. I love it.
Always better to, always better to get that information better than they do, right?
Yes.
Or at least
they
well
have
as they
what
do.
they have, and they draw the conclusions from the things that they have, and they don't usually have the whole story. And so you are able to provide them with the whole story and say, look, this guy lost money last year. He shouldn't know anything. Or whatever the situation is, like, versus the $200,000 1099 where they owed $100,000 in tax, which is again, I don't want to jump into it too much because I know we would just go on, but the tax relief commercials that you see always during the day, during the talk shows, where they go, I had a $115,000 balance and so got me out for $4,000. Well, that was they just filed the return. That's really all they did, and they charged you $20,000 to do it.
Yeah. Right. And there are different avenues. This is a complicated conversation. You mentioned, but when it comes to specifically in the trucking industry, to kind of get back to our business and our industry, there are so many accountants who don't know trucking that actually gets truckers into IRS trouble, because the accountant didn't know what they couldn't write off. We've got a client who came to us, and you mentioned some of the things that can happen, repairs and things like that can occur that are huge expenses in the trucking industry. We had someone come to us. Their accountant wouldn't let them write. They wouldn't believe that they had the amount of repair costs that they had. Well, they had And so the accountant was literally calling them out, going, well, no, I can't write that number in there. I can't write $78,000 for repairs into it. I can't write that in there. And they were like, but that's what it costs. Well, if you don't know anything about trucking and you're going to, and you go, well, there's no possible way, they actually didn't get the write-off that they should have had for a repair of that magnitude. And us going in and refiling their taxes accurately, just that one simple thing. As someone, file your taxes accurately. And one of the other things that we always do is we'll look back on last year, make sure that was done right. But doing that research, having your homework done, and then making sure you get set up looking ahead that you're on the right track and know what you're doing.
And that is step 3. Oh, you mentioned repairs. What about diesel fuel? Man, seeing 80 grand per truck in diesel fuel, they're like, oh no, gas doesn't cost that much. Like, look, we go through 20,000 gallons a year, people, and that's a solo. A team goes through twice that. So, yeah, again, get people. If you're having, just as a general, for all of my small trucking companies that we're talking to, as a rule, if you feel like your service provider in any kind doesn't understand your business and they're asking you questions like, how could you possibly spend that much on repairs? How could you possibly spend that much on fuel? You got the wrong people. I just forget about us, forget about Jim and his company, but just in general, man, you got the wrong people. If they're like, no, that can't be. Well, yeah, it can. It is. So, yeah, that's your sign that you need to leave that company, whether it's attorney or insurance agency, or I'm trying, like, people that are in industries different than us. But yeah, if they don't, well, what do you mean you had this? Well, yeah, okay, you need trucking specialists, and trucking is different, and we all know it. We don't get to play by the same rules. None of the regular laws are written for us.
No.
There's like nothing is written for trucking. The only thing we get is the per diem allowance, is a special thing for the transportation industry. But there's things like even things in my world where 401k audits, they're like, well, how many hours did the employee work? Like, they don't send us hours. They send us miles. And so we worked out a convention for it, and we work it out in the IR, and we never have a problem in a 401k audit. But I'm just saying, like, now you're starting to get like paid leave laws that are based on hours in different states. Michigan, where I am, is starting one next month.
Sure.
So we're having to come up with, well, tell us how you want us to determine hours. But yeah, like, if your people don't understand you, never, be like, thanks, have a good day, I'm gonna go find an expert.
And those calculations can make the difference between staying in business or going out of business.
What you were talking about was huge. That repair, oh my goodness.
One of the things I talk about a lot with folks, this is pretty straight shooting, but no driver is going out of business because they can't manage the steering wheel or push the pedal down. Mm-hmm. They're going out of business because they can't manage the checkbook, mm-hmm. or the taxes, or it's financial. And if you're smart, you just get a financial partner who can help navigate that with you, and then you're good. We can talk about a lot of this, in terms of the minute details and how many things people are missing. But there are those deductions that you're talking about, and those write-offs and the things that we're talking about, they can make the difference between staying in business and going out of business. $80,000 is definitely enough to make someone stay in or go out of business.
The tax on $80,000 is enough to do that. The self-employment tax alone is 12 grand, and then you got the income tax, whatever their income tax rate is on top of that, and their state income tax rate, easily looking at 35 grand.
We had a company out of Texas. We do the Texas Trucking Show. We're a little different in this respect too. We kind of meet truckers where they live. So we did Matt's in Louisville. We've done the I-80 Truck Show. We do shows in Houston and Nashville. We'll be in Florida and California this year. So we get out and actually go to where the drivers are and have conversations. And we were in Texas, and we had a driver who we're now working with, who was working with they said they were a transportation focused tax and accounting company. And they had the percentage on per diem that they were writing off for this person as 50% instead of 80%.
That was fine 20 years ago,
and
sure.
They're billed as a transportation and trucking tax and accounting firm. And they were 30% So what's that 30% times? This guy was on the road like 265 days.
Yep.
What's 265 times 30% of your per diem, right?
Right. Yeah,
I
per diem
start
usually
to add
about
up,
15 grand a year. So you're instead of, even at the deducted part, it's 15 grand a year. That's the 80% for a lot of guys. So then, yeah, you're taking away 3/8 of
taking five
that.
grand.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
like you're just lopping 5 grand off this guy's income.
Hmm.
Working with that accounting company cost that guy $5,000 a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And
on there,
every year. Yeah. And every year. Absolutely. Yeah. That's,
right? So I was like, how long have they been doing this? So we
yeah.
immediately, our company immediately made this guy $10,000 by the refiling last year and filing the term.
Yep.
We immediately made that guy 10 grand.
That's
And
a
you know
good day
what?
for
What makes
him.
10 grand? Talk to, like, right? Like, I,
Yeah.
so
How
some
many,
of the crazy is,
how many
to be
$10,000
no brainer,
days do you have? Right. Those are
right?
good days.
Well, that's a good day. It's a really good day.
I
Yeah.
like when the
So,
accounting people get to be the hero.
right? I mean, I like those things, but when you start to do things that can really dramatically affect you positively or negatively to the tune of like 5 grand a pop, you should be doing your homework, right? And that guy, like, truckers should be doing a little bit of homework. Well, I hope you're watching this and listening to me. I'm a pretty good, easy, funny guy to talk with, but I can also save your ass $10,000 sometimes, right?
It's worth the conversation. And you talk about avoiding future tax debt. Your step 3, make your quarterly estimateds. That should be any tax accountant should be able to help you with that. Even if they're not trucking, but you making the right ones, again, you get the trucking person. Keeping accurate records, man, that's part of why I don't do taxes anymore. It was just too hard for me to get these guys to keep records. I don't want a shoebox of receipts.
I know that can be tough having someone. We do have people walk in with the shoebox or the Ziploc bag. Um, what we do offer though, and everybody's got a smartphone. We have a portal where you can just snap a picture, and we have little scanners we work with that are about this big, and you can scan something into us. You can get that information to us right when you get it now,
Yeah, that's
anywhere in
awesome.
all 50 states. So we're set up to work with a trucker in any of the 50 states, anywhere you are. You can just scan that stuff into us, whether it's your settlement statements or gas receipts or whatever it is. You send it right into our portal, and then we run it right through the bookkeeping process. So we've made that part of it a little easier.
That was why I never got into bookkeeping really. I couldn't work that out for me. I Yeah, there was just no way. So I am glad that there is a solution. Because your third thing was talk to a tax professional, which yes, absolutely. Don't If you're a small trucking company or a solo truck driver, you don't have to fight this alone. And the cost, I mean, it's not for me. I'm not going to give away a rate, and I will tell everybody else that I'm not even going to ask him because he's going to tell you it depends because every tax situation is different. Just like every load is different. If I said how much is a load to go from Detroit to Dallas, Texas, you'd need to know more information. When does it pick up? Does it require expedited service? Is it a flatbed? Is it a van? Is it a whatever? So taxes are the same way. That's not how it works. However, I would tell you all, if you don't have a tax professional that really gets trucking, you go get the help. It's more affordable than you might think it is. I don't know what everybody thinks. And look, just having the conversation, somebody like Jim and Jim's team could save you that 10 grand. So, and it's not like it's actually, if they ever tell you we can save you 10 grand, but we get half of it as our reward, by the way, and I didn't talk to Jim about this before, but that's totally not cool. And I don't think Jim does that. I think Jim is, we charge a fee to do this thing and you get 10
Yeah,
grand.
no.
Yeah. And so that's why I didn't
So
even ask you because I just trusted you guys didn't do it.
we would know what we do in those situations. One of the good things, and I think that we've talked about it several times, and it's been what we've done here today. We don't give a price up front because we have to have the conversation because we tailor our solutions to the individual or the company. I mean, I used to do a lot of I ran a painting company for 30 years. If I could put my eyes on it and see exactly what it was, I could give you a price. Anything I can't put my eyes on and see exactly what it is right up front, it's gonna take a conversation or some digging. But that's the best thing that I can give you. You get a free gift every time you come into our world because you get a conversation. and that's what other accountants aren't even beginning to have. We are going to have the conversation with you so that we learn a little bit about you. You learn some things about you in the process, and about how your business should run and what you should be doing, and so that we actually form a partnership instead of a transaction. The partnership is the ongoing guidance part of that. 97% of the trucks on the road are one driver, one truck companies. 97%. 97% of all trucking companies are just one guy, one truck. But even that one guy and that one truck needs this strategic planning conversation, right? They need someone who can look them in the eye and say, hey, you're doing this wrong, and you really need to stop it. It's really going to do you wrong in the future. And also who can say, hey, you know what? Where are you going? I've got a new client who started with us yesterday. He's a one truck, one driver guy, but he's moving on from doing the driving. He's about to buy a second truck. He wants strategic planning guidance, right? He wants someone to say, here are the things you need to know about next year. Here are the things in 5 years that are going to be a real factor for you. Looking back last year, you know what? We should change this thing from last year and refile that, and the moving ahead be like this. If you're going to have another truck next year, like all those things that we can have a conversation with someone to not only save them from going out of business, but help them become next level business if that's where we're going, right? That's the value of having a partnership versus a transaction. You don't get that with ATB or some of the, you're just not going to get that with someone else. And so, usually I'm able to help someone just get a better grasp on how to run their trucking business in about a half an hour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You've got to, like you talked about that transition from basically hiring your first driver that's not the owner. And that's such a big deal. It can be scary to people that haven't done it. And if you get the right help, it's really not scary. And if your goal is to to make a lot of money over time, you're going to have to hire other drivers because you can only haul so many loads yourself. And so, and it's a whole different skill set of being able to manage the business versus just
No doubt.
yourself. And even as an owner operator, even as a solo, even if you don't even have your own authority, you're leased onto somebody, you're still own a business and you need to run it like a business. And I beg people to do this when I talk to them, because this isn't a lemonade stand when you were 6 years old. This is important. This is your livelihood. And so your business needs to make more than you would make as a driver because you've got this risk. And so you've got to understand that. And so for a relatively small amount of money, you're going to get guidance that's going to make you money. You're going to get tax strategies that are going to save you the pain of getting the letters, and it does end up becoming a health issue. And it also just knowing that you've got this handled. And what we like to tell people too is you can get the expertise that big companies get without having to pay the big company amounts or having to work there. Like the small trucking companies really need that. And so that's why when I met you, I'm like, oh, we got to work with these guys because they just fill in the hole for us. And I don't do the taxes. I still do our legacy tax people now, but the tax laws keep changing, and you got to have people that stay up on it, which is where you guys are such a great fit. Is that you guys are going to stay
all
up
of our
on it
folks
all the
tax
time?
every year.
Yeah.
No, everyone goes to tax school every year. We're updating all the time on and not just generic. What are the generic changes? But we do a lot of farm taxes also. We do a lot of transportation. Transportation and farm has some kind of strange overlapping similarities and things like that that we work on. But of the changes every year, some of them are significant. Some of those percentage changes in a per diem or write-off, some of those can add up. And thousands of dollars at the end of the year, can make a big difference in your bottom line.
Well, absolutely. And I think this is your last slide. It says, take action today. People, if you guys have tax questions, I would encourage you to reach out to Jim and his team at Taxes4Truckers.com. Go have the conversation. Like just go do it and you'll feel better about it. And if for some reason it wasn't a fit for you, at least you'd know. But it's not going to cost you anything to have a brief conversation and say, hey, look, these guys can really help me, and I can focus on what I've got to do. Because tax day's coming every year. It shows up every year. Just so it's something we got to deal with. So yeah, like I said, these guys are fantastic. I just turned off my screen sharing. it's great. And I'm going to be with them. I'm going with them to the Florida Trucking Show in Fort Lauderdale in the middle of February because I'm in Michigan and Florida sounds pretty good. We're going to be right
Yeah,
next to each other, and it's going to be great.
we got a month away from the trip, right? We're a month from some time in Florida.
Yeah, exactly. It'll thaw out a little bit, and well, you guys got hammered worse this week than we did, but
You know what?
it's
We got lucky.
yeah.
We got.
Ugh, no, we don't need that. Florida will be nice and sunny, hopefully. But yeah, if you're down in the Fort Lauderdale area that weekend, come to the Broward County Convention Center. You know, and I'll tell you, I know what we do, and I think that Jim does this too. If he doesn't, then he can correct me. But somebody has a quick question, we don't make sure they're a client before we answer it.
Oh,
Our mission is to help people, so we want to help people, and we want to help trucking companies. I think now you're not going to here do my tax return for free, but if they asked a quick question, I'm sure especially if they came to the show, you're happy to talk to them.
my wife's our lead accountant. Leah Whitler is the lead accountant in the company, and she actually bought her, the book of business that she started with from her professor, from her college professor, and then went on to teach his classes. She loves to answer those questions. And then we really, I was a little league coach for 30 plus years. We both have that mentality that we want to bring people up. I really have that, mentality of, a rising tide lifts all ships. And especially when it comes to the business side of trucking, lots of drivers who went from being a really good driver and knowing everything about driving to being business owners. Being a business owner is a different deal. It's a different deal. It just is. And so those guys, gals, lots of people out there who've just made that transition and are new to it and just need a little help to understand some of the areas that they're not as familiar with, or have someone outsource their payroll and bookkeeping. And one of the things I wanted to add, and I know that this is kind of at the end of this, but in terms of what makes your company and our company both a little bit different is that we are both brick and mortar companies. Like, we're not just some, number in wherever that you call and it goes into the ethosphere. We actually have multiple locations. I know you guys have a physical location. We're actually real world companies doing this work with actual people who answer the questions. And so I think that matters to a lot of folks. I think the transactional online world has a place, and everyone's loved lots of the transactions you can get done by just jumping online and doing it real quick. But when you need someone to answer a payroll question, I want to know that there's somebody in Michigan in a building I can call and go, hey, my client's got a question here, or Sally didn't get her check, or whatever it is. I want to be able to make that call to you guys in your building in Michigan, just like I think a lot of folks want to be able to call Old Wine, Iowa, or Waterloo, Iowa, or Minneapolis, Minnesota, and say, hey, need to talk to a person. I think that makes a difference, and I think the pendulum's swinging back that direction a little bit more.
I think so too. Yeah, we see our people want to be known and understood, and so one of my big bugaboos is I don't like call trees, and so where you got to press 1 for this and 2 for this and 3 for this, and so yeah, like when somebody calls our number, it rings to almost all the phones in the building. If they call the main line, because we don't want people to have to go through a call tree. They just want an answer to their question, or they just want help. So let's just help them. And so, yeah, that's again, yeah, from the time I met you guys, I was like, oh yeah, these guys are exactly the kind of people we need to be sending people to, because they're going to help. They're going to help take on the IRS problems instead of, and the other thing too is I think you guys translate trucking into English, or taxes into English, I mean. So it's a helpful thing versus like you would talk about other companies that will just be like, well, you owe this much, and they might go into some detailed explanation why, but they don't really, they're speaking, it's like talking to a doctor who's a specialist. It's hard for them to like just use words like tummy. Don't give me esophageal something or whatever.
Well,
just tell me your tummy aches.
I think, unfortunately, I think the truth of that is I think there are a lot of companies that want to mystify everything or keep everything shrouded in some capacity so that you don't quite. I don't underestimate the intelligence of my client. I just don't. We don't look at that way. I know that truck drivers are very smart people, very capable people. Just because they're not accountants or just because they're not tax experts doesn't mean they're not going to understand the concept. And so we're just straight shooters. I think we're a little more straight talkers than a lot of companies out there. And I think that's serving us well. Our client base is growing because people come to us because they get reality,
Yeah.
and they get the full picture. We're not trying to shroud it in mystery or act like there's something that we're always going to know that you're never going to find. We're not the Wizard of Oz. There's no man behind the curtain, and we just want to look people in the eye and go, okay, look, tell me your reality, and I'll tell you how we get you to the other side of your problem and fix it and let you start sleeping again.
Yeah.
It's really that.
Yeah, trucking people have a pretty good BS meter. So you just got to be straight with them. And that's what we found too. Like they don't have to like what you're going to tell them, but they'll at least appreciate that you're being truthful with them and laying it out
Yep.
and just in a way that's just understandable for everybody. We got to wrap this
Well,
up. But now your email's Jim@Taxes4Truckers.com. Is that right?
Jim at Taxes4Truckers.com
Yes, that's awesome.
or 1-888-TAX, 4TRK is our 800 number.
Beautiful. I didn't get a good 800 number like that. That's fantastic. And then I also would tell you, go to Taxes4Truckers.com, and they have a blog there that's really informative. They're on at Trucking Payroll. They're on our Good People to Know tab. So like we can send you a link right to them. Because again, our mission is to help trucking families. And so anytime we meet people like Jim and his team that want to help trucking families, we want to spread the word about them too. Hey, do you think we can do this again in a couple of months?
Absolutely, Mike. Thanks for the time. I'm so glad we were able to take the time to do it and really get into some good topics. A lot of content here that people are going to hear. So we definitely need to do this another time here soon.
Yeah. So if anybody's watching, if you have questions for us and you don't want to actually email either of us, you can comment where you find this video, and we'll bring it up in a couple of months, we'll do this again and we'll answer your questions. By then you'll be right in tax season, so you'll probably have a lot more questions.
Yeah, look, let's try and like this is end of February, beginning of March.
Yep.
Gather some questions together, and then do another one and focus on the 15th is coming, and what are the preparations I need to know about, and answer a few of those questions before people have to file. So let's plan on doing that.
That sounds great. Jim, thank you so much. If you want to reach him again, Jim at Taxes4Truckers.com. You can call in, go to their website. Everything's right there. Again, I love their website too. So just check them out. They can help you. They can take this burden away from you. So with that, thank you everybody, and thanks Jim, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye, guys.